All right. Well, happy Wednesday. Here we are. I cannot believe it is pretty much the end of 2023, right? I'm going to do my little tech checks to make sure everything's going as it's supposed to go. And I'm going to get right into this topic we have today, pouring from an empty cup, also known as normalizing exhaustion. So let me just do the tech check and I will get right to it. I hope that you had a great few, even if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, maybe you just had like a great few days off. I hope that that went really well for you. And that maybe you're beginning to feel some, what shall we say, ease as we move into the end of the year. I'm going to wind over here and check in. And see. As I've been talking about this last, I don't know, maybe a few weeks or so, that the end of the year can be one of those times when we just feel, ugh, like, oh no, there's way too much going on. So it seems like a really good time to talk about this idea of pouring from an empty cup. You probably heard that phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. Yet I think many of us, and I'm guilty of it too, because I am a recovering overdoer, will try to do more than we actually have time to do or space to do. And more importantly, we'll try to do what we don't have energy to do. So as I've mentioned before, developed lots of little techniques to help me shift out of that pattern when I notice it in myself. So let's just talk about what this can look like. I mentioned the hi, how are you? Peace and blessing. I mentioned that when I put this post up that I went to a networking event and there was this guest speaker who was doing really well in her career and she got in this upper managerial position. She talked about how she would put in all the hours necessary, like people could count on hers because she was working beyond 40 hours a week. And interestingly, one of the products that her company sold was mattresses. And they had this mission of creating these very comfortable, innovative mattresses that kind of gave you exactly what you needed to get the best sleep. So while she was dedicated to helping people rest and recover, she was exhausting herself, going at a pace that wasn't really sustainable. So, of course, there may be times when you have to work a little extra, but to create an unsustainable pace on an ongoing basis will just drain you down to nothing. And your cup is empty and you're still trying to go. Now, why does that happen? Well, sometimes it's built into the code of our professions. Um, you might be a healthcare provider, and it was just built into the way you were trained. You had to stay up all extra hours. You had to stay up ridiculous hours. It can also come from just a history of not being not knowing or thinking that you are allowed to rest. The idea that you cannot rest is something that we see across experiences. I'll say from my experience with my elders, I grew up with people who worked two jobs. And they did that because they needed money to take care of themselves and their families. They could not, right? But they also had this vision of if I do this and I give my children a little bit more, that generation will hopefully not have to do what I'm having to do, right? So, um, but sometimes, even when you are the generation that doesn't have to do that, you still feel like, well, I better push extra hard. And you may also be getting messages from your environment that suggests you need to push extra hard. I see this too. I think I've mentioned this before when sometimes people feel like they're not welcome in their workplaces. And, that's one of the conditions that creates burnout is that you don't feel community in your workplace. You don't feel a sense of fairness, and you're trying your best to give it all. And you see other people exhausting themselves as well, but then you're going double time because you feel left out. All of those patterns lead to exhaustion, and probably are part of the reason that in the last year or so we've seen a resurgence of this discussion of what some are calling a human energy crisis. I've heard it as human energy crisis probably back in maybe 2004 was one of the times that I saw a video that was from 2004 that was about this human energy crisis. I also heard it talked about as this personal energy crisis, right? And I'm a personal energy strategist. So this whole idea, yes, right. Somebody's telling me how they grew up with elders. Yep. That wanted to dispel any and all stereotypes of being lazy. Yes, that is absolutely one of the reasons that people will push themselves to exhaustion is you don't want to be seen as lazy. And that will get you to that point where you say, okay, I am pushing myself to the end. I'm pushing myself past the point that I can go. So we can see that there are both social factors, right? Because that laziness, that stereotype, has nothing to do with really who we are, who our elders were, but it's a stereotype that exists in this whole sort of system of oppression and discrimination that we've been navigating for generations. So the social issues can definitely bring you to the point that you make choices that leave you in an exhausted place. And also the professional, unspoken professional codes, right? That you have to stay late. If you ever watched some television shows and it's like, it might be about doctors, it might be about lawyers, some kind of person who's in some sort of service position, and they are at the office all the time. Somebody calls them, might be about police officers, right? They're they're in this position where people call them out of their sleep and they have to go work. So all of those kind of social messages, those I guess you will call them lifestyle messages, will get us to that place where we say exhaustion is what we should expect. We should expect exhaustion. But I will also tell you this: as much as I watched my elders as a child work and work um, for various reasons, I also watched them either take. My grandmother was very good at taking a daily joy break, right? She loved watching soap operas, and that was every day. She made sure she got everything done, got the kids who were little enough to go to nap, and then she watched. She took her time for herself. I also watched them every Sunday and sometimes on Wednesday night go for their spiritual food. They went to church or they went to some Bible study. They did something. And then along throughout the year, there were like these moments when they had several days that they would go to church in a row. So, like in one night, it's revival week, right? It's called revival. Right? So, literally, it's like, I want to revive my spirit so I can keep thriving. So, there were these messages also, even in that setting where life was challenging and um, the social issues made it more challenging, that people found ways to get in touch with what really allows them to thrive. And that really is where I am today is like, what is it that you can do that you can get into that place inside of you that allows you to thrive, that helps you thrive, and organize your life in ways that honors that part of you as well. So the first thing I think in order to get there is to really just notice your own patterns. Like notice what is it? Like I've learned ways of catching myself. I keep a bullet journal and I'll write these things in the bullet journal and I cross them off when I do them. And then if I can't do them, I have a little arrow. That's kind of the technique. Move it to another day. Now, if I'm moving something for 3 days in a row, I'm like, okay, Sandra, you're trying to do too much. So that's one of my ways of catching myself. Now, you also know that I really love practices like yoga nidra and mindfulness. So I've gotten used to checking in with my body and just feeling like asking my shoulders to be a partner because this is where I tend to like start to go like, oh, when I'm going like this, I'm like, oh, okay, so you're exhausted and you're trying to push yourself. Even I start to notice sometimes I'm leaning forward. Like I go for a walk. I love taking a walk outside. But if I notice like I'm kind of leaning into the walk, I'm like, oh, wait. You're rushing. You're feeling like there's too much to do. And right, you're going at a pace that's way too much, too fast for you. And that's what exhausts us. We're trying to do more than we actually can. So I've noticed these things about myself. So the first thing is to really start to notice your pattern. You have to start like to get to know them. You have to allow them to introduce themselves to you, right? And say, "Oh, okay, so this like tension in my shoulders, this leaning forward, this is my body telling me, whoa, 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 your mind is going faster than you can get, right? You've got too much in front of you and you're trying to get to it. You're just trying to get to it. So that tells me, all right, hold on, slow down. And one of my favorite ways to slow myself down is just to take that moment and check in with what my body is saying. And that works for me really well. I've had clients though who have done this for so long and exhausted themselves over a period of time that they don't really hear their bodies very much anymore. So we have to relearn to hear our bodies because we have a nervous system that senses and perceives. So we can relearn to hear our bodies. The other thing to help curb this feeling of exhaustion is to really partner exhaustion with productivity, or what people call productivity. So we want to get things done, we want to do things, we want to take care of the family, we want to take care of the work, we want to take care of ourselves. And we're kind of keeping a high pace, a fast pace to get that done. Somewhere in there, when we're doing all the things has to be spiced with resting and recovering. And you can find like short things you can do that will help you rest and recover. Even if you're a provider who has to go from one thing to another. There's always one space. There's a space between things. Really mark that space. Mark this is, I'm leaving this, or I'm putting this aside. Now I am here in this moment. And now I am going to this. So those little markers sometimes just start to help us tune in. When we've been exhausted for so long, you might need some medical intervention. But when we've been in that pattern for so long, it's hard to hear ourselves. Um, we're caught up in the noise of the to-do list, the noise of the things that are demanding our attention. So the simple thing is first start with what your patterns are, and then start to look for little ways you can give yourself some space, right? When you notice that pattern now, like just say you notice that, like I with the right now, when you sense it, you're like, oh, okay, wait, that's the pattern. Let me check in. Am I trying to do too much? What's on my plate today? Can I move anything? Another thing I like, and this will be like, I think probably a good place to stop with techniques for today, is to actually look at what I did the day before, maybe even the last couple of days, and notice which one of those things left me feeling refreshed, energized, like took my energy up. So maybe you were writing a paper, like sometimes that's what I have to do. Um, or maybe I was talking with a client, or I took a walk, or I did the dishes, right? Um, I look at what was there and it's like, which one of these things left me feeling that my energy was going up, which left me feeling down. So if you were in a meeting, say with someone, and you just felt like this was just really hard and it was draining, that's a down. And if you were doing something that left you feeling refreshed, that's an up. Now you might have things that are also kind of neutral. So you can put just a mark like meh, like a dash. And then the next step is to really look at those things that take you away from your energy, that drain you, that leave you feeling like low. And see if there's something about them you can change. Is this a task that you could easily delegate to somebody else? Is this something that you could simply delete, that you don't really have to do that anymore? That you can just let that go? You know, like that's the end of you um, picking up somebody for the carpool, right? You're just done with the carpool, right? Um, so that, right, it could be anything. It could be that's the end of you doing the summary for whatever happens at your at work, or that's the end of you doing something, right? So there's maybe something that you can delete. So you could delegate it, you could delete it, or you could do it differently. Now I'll tell you, as a college professor, oftentimes my schedule can get into a place where I don't really like the pace of it. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to be teaching this number of classes. What is a way to actually begin to shift my schedule so it feels more manageable to me? And sometimes that means doing teaching a class in a different way. Sometimes that means teaching a class as a hybrid class where I'm partly, I can work from home sometimes and I can be face to face sometimes. So thinking about how you might do things differently if they take you to that down place can help you. Then you want to also look at the ups, those things that left you feeling like, yeah, I did that. That just felt right. And notice what is it about those ups that's taking you there, right? What is it about that thing that you loved, that you enjoyed, that left you feeling refreshed or fulfilled in some way? And pay attention to what values are being activated. I mean, values are being activated even when you have a down. I suggest to pay attention to what values are being activated when you have an up because you can also use those values to help you make decisions about how to change things that bring you down. So if you, I remember uh, a few weeks ago, I was teaching a class and I just left the class feeling incredibly energized. And I was like, so what did I do differently? And it was all about this kind of community that I was able to create in the class that day. And so that, right, in community, right, creating community is one of my values. So for me, doing that, right, thinking about how important community is can guide me to think, well, how could I do something, something that's bringing me down? Is there a way for me to create community in that experience? That would actually help me probably navigate it and feel more energized. Another little guideline I like, I said I was going to stop at that one, but I'm going to give you this other one because it just popped into my head, is that when I look at my day, maybe 4 days a week, I want to have days where I have projects that take me a longer period of time. And when I say a longer period, these would be things that take me 1 to 3 hours to manage. So I don't want those, two of those in a day, really. I would like to have those and maybe some medium sized projects in a day and in between some breaks. So think about how you're ordering, right? If you can shift the order of things, sometimes you're in a position that you can't really shift. But if you can, even shift the order of it in the day. Sometimes, like for me, the bigger things are better at the beginning of the day because that early morning time, that's Sandra's time, right? Nighttime, that's Sandra's rest. So if I have a bigger project, I want to do it earlier in the day. So that would be the other thing, is just to think about ordering your days so that you have fewer of those huge projects in one day. All right. I'm just going to check and see if anybody has any questions or thoughts. Thank you to everybody who commented. Yay for that. um, I'll look over here. Yeah. Okay. And I think, yeah, I think we're all set. Good. Okay. So if there's no more questions today, I'm going to wish you a beautiful, beautiful day. And I will see you again in January. I'm taking December off, spending some time with my elders and family. And I will see you in January. Have a good one.